sort of happened in San Francisco, and I'd always been into hip hop, and from that into the more breakbeat oriented side of techno. And we started to try to make tracks that would somehow fit in, and the result was a bunch of just horrible music.
And we were rejected by noise people too, so firmly with failure in mind, we combined the two things, the sort of noise and the would-be techno.
That's when it started to click.
Hey, welcome to Electric Independence. This episode, we're in Baltimore visiting the home studio of Drew Daniel and MC Schmid, better known as Matmos.
Hey.
Hello, how you doing, Jordan?
Drew, nice to meet you. Come on in.
They're a duo famous for sampling all manner of objects, such as rat cages and medical instruments. They've got a bunch of analog and digital synths that they're going to show us down in the basement.
My beautiful home.
Oh, wow.
The way that we make music varies from record to record. We think at the level of the album first. And every album is driven by a kind of concept that organizes it when I'm in charge. When Martin's in charge, we get instruments and we start to play songs and riffs emerge and songs kind of grow in a more organic way. When I'm in charge, I tend to have a concept that drives the entirety of the piece. We're working on a record right now called The Marriage of True Minds, which is based on telepathy. And telepathy seemed like a potent metaphor for what it is to be in a band. We're recreating parapsychology experiments from the 60s, but we're generating music out of the transcripts of those telepathic sessions.
All right, so I'm going to be directly beneath you on another floor of this building. I'm going to try and transmit with my mind the concept of the new Matmos record.
A love relationship is also an endless quest to figure out what the other is thinking, which is a telepathic desire. So to me, music, improvisation, community, romance, they're all forms of telepathy. We met when I was a go-go dancer at Club Uranus. I was underage. I was studying philosophy at Berkeley at the time, but was narcissistic enough to enjoy the chance to shake my thing in a jockstrap made out of a plastic fish, and Martin put $1 in my jockstrap and kind of came at me with some pickup line about my boyfriend who was a car mechanic working on his car.
But the guy I was standing with while we were watching Drew go-go dance said, oh, you know, he does electronic music too. And he studies philosophy at Berkeley. These are not things that you associate with go-go dancers, and I was intrigued.
I actually knew about Martin because he was in this sort of occult industrial band at the time, and it was this very sort of sleazy dominatrixes with whips and leather jumpsuits grinding around. And then there was this weird, very suburban, scarily normal looking person running the synthesizers, and that was Martin.
At the time, having a computer was kind of a big deal. And I had a computer and could edit audio on the computer, and I was like, do you want to come over and edit audio on my computer? It was full on I put my hand on his knee while we were oh, and you click the mouse like this, you know,
The first thing we did actually wasn't songs, it was making musique concrète, you know, it was making one weird noise and then a hard cut to another weird noise and then flip it backwards and pitch it up and then another weird noise, and so it was just this kind of very raw, very simple cut-ups. We kind of gave up on trying to please other people and pursued instead the idea of well, let's make rhythms and let's make bass lines, but let's only make them out of objects and events and singular sound sources. You know, it's a kind of gamble that you could get an entire musical world out of just a simple, singular thing.
So this is a super core piece of gear for us, the Barkasberry planar wave transducer. And it is the greatest contact mic ever made. We use it with a rat cage. My rat cage is not in tune. Here's what it's like without the Barkasberry. Oh, still sounds pretty good. Sweet acoustic rat cage. So the Barkasberry is a pretty major major piece of gear for us for sampling weird objects that wouldn't otherwise give up a sound.
The beast at the core of the early Matmos records was a Roland W30 sampler. It was a 12-bit sampler. Each diskette could store 27 seconds of sample time. So I would put things on tape and speed them up and sample them and then drop it an octave so I could turn a 1.2 second loop into a 2.4 second loop. Like anything I could do to get as much out of those 27 seconds as possible. And I think that restriction was really important for us, and it's why a lot of the early songs are the way they are. For me, what's primary is the sort of song as an assemblage of elements of who and what objects recorded where, in what kind of space, for how long. That's the joy of music making, is kind of the emergence, like the sort of like a crystal forming around a few tiny choices that kind of have consequences. And that isn't necessarily about gear. It can be, but it can just be about keeping open, like, what is an instrument at all. We were in Italy as part of Terry Riley's ensemble, playing a piece of his and playing in C, and there was a music shop across the street, and they had this, a Riddell Digi 60 Tall Mala, and it's basically the 808 of India. It's got all these traditional Indian patterns, and you can tune them. You can tune all of the drum sounds. Apparently it's not samples, it's oscillators emulating it. I'm not
It's got a beautiful sound, and the speakers and the box, they all, like, it sounds good.
The moisturizer is a playable spring reverb, so you can play this spring in a gestural way, like a kind of really dirty bass guitar. You can also send signal through it, and then it's got a very assertive filter, which gets quite gnarly when you really push what you're driving through it.
My main axe is the Roland V-Synth, hot off the presses in like 2002. I dread this thing dying because I love it. I think what it really is it's a small dedicated computer inside the body of a keyboard.
You hear it and it gives you that sensation of like drinking slightly sour milk, where it's like something is not right here.
Certain tools will lead you to do certain kinds of things. It's just inevitable.
The VT1 is designed to create vocoder-like effects. So there's a pitch shifter, right, of low, high, but it's got slidable formants which add an extra like kind of voice-like modality to it. And then it can also be used with a mic if you want low green velvet or black metal
Formant.
Or you can go high like that, but the slidable formants
What?
Extra strangeness to
what the voice is
It's not
doing.
changing the pitch. Like, what the hell is that it's changing? It's like a...
formants are
I think formants are aspects of the way that vowel sounds happen due to like shapes in the jaw.
Right, it's like, it's sliding between different digital simulations of sizes and shapes of mouth.
I think.
The 2600 and I are not best of friends. I am not in love with the 2600.
This one showed up for us modded. Somebody had put this weird phaser on it, and we had to pay a ton of money to get that taken out because it was crappy and just generally refurbished, because I think it had been in a garbage bag, like with water on it. I mean, it was, someone had sprayed all this formula.
Cramelin.
Yeah.
It's like a dirt remover lubricant.
It was dripping with lubricant. It was nasty.
I mean, so you guys
We've all been there.
I mean, have you ever felt like I am fluid with this, and I love it, and it loves me, and
No, but I'm a screen guy. I mean, I'm much more of a like hunt and capture, and then sit and obsessively edit. I'm more of an editor. I'm not a player. I also am suspicious of the rhetoric of purity and nostalgia that is trotted out in relation to going all analog.
it's easier. I guess it's easier to buy an analog synthesizer than to analyze what you're doing. You should do what you can with what you have, and don't move on until you've scrubbed every, milligram of paint out of the brush. Like, do what you can with what you've got. Love the one you're with.
And we do.
Oh.
The sky is always the hardest part.